Admiral Kang Tae-soo had never felt so small in his entire life. He stood in the center of the Galactic Assembly Hall, a massive dome made of living crystal that floated above a gas giant. Around him, 12 platforms rose in a circle, each holding representatives from the most powerful species in the known galaxy. They looked down at him like giants watching an insect. He was the first human to ever stand in this place. His species had only discovered faster than light travel 40 years ago. To these ancient beings, humanity was like a baby taking its first steps. They had allowed him to speak today only because Earth had begged for months. They expected nothing important from him. They were wrong. "I bring a warning," Tae-soo said. His voice echoed in the vast chamber. "Something is coming. Something that will kill us all." A sound like wind through hollow bones filled the hall. It took Tae-soo a moment to realize it was laughter. The Serati Primarch, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms, leaned forward on his platform. His name was Velionis, and he had ruled his people for over 3,000 years. "The human wishes to teach us about danger," Velionis said. "How amusing. Your species still fights wars over resources. You still let your own kind starve while others grow fat. And you come here to warn us?" Tae-soo kept his face calm. He had expected this. Dr. Park Yuna had prepared him for the insults and the dismissal. She stood behind him now, a small woman with tired eyes who had not slept in 3 days. In her hands, she held a data device containing information that had cost 17 human lives to collect. "Show them," Tae-soo said quietly. Yuna stepped forward and activated the device. A holographic image appeared in the center of the hall, showing a star map of the galaxy's outer edge. Red dots marked human colony worlds. Blue dots marked the territories of the Council species. And at the very edge, there was something else. A black stain that spread across the map like spilled ink. 6 months ago, our deep space monitoring station detected an anomaly, Yuna explained. Her voice was soft but steady. At first, we thought it was a sensor error. But then, we sent ships to investigate. She changed the image. Now the hall could see footage from a human vessel. Stars filled the screen, bright and beautiful. Then, one by one, they began to disappear. Not explode. Not fade. They simply stopped existing, swallowed by a wave of absolute darkness. The ships we sent did not return, Yuna continued. Only their final transmissions reached us. The darkness moves with purpose. It consumes stellar energy. It feeds on stars themselves. Based on our calculations, it will reach Council space within 18 months. Silence fell over the assembly. For a moment, Tae-soo allowed himself to hope. Perhaps they would listen. Perhaps they would understand. Then High Speaker Arn of the Bakari made a sound like breaking glass. It was their version of a sigh. The Bakari were beings made of living crystal, beautiful and cold. They had existed for 10,000 years and believed themselves to be the wisest species in the galaxy. Your sensors are primitive, Arn said. Your ships are slow and your technology is crude. You have misread natural phenomena and turned it into a monster story to frighten yourselves. With respect, Yuna replied, our scientists have analyzed this data for months. The mathematics do not lie. This entity, whatever it is, has already consumed an estimated 47 stars. It is growing larger and moving faster with each one it takes. The Moradi delegate, an insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected delight, clicked its mandibles. Even if this were true, what do you expect us to do? We have no weapon that can fight a natural phenomenon. It is not natural, Tae-soo said firmly. Natural things do not hunt. Natural things do not change direction to chase energy sources. This thing is alive, and it is hungry, and it is coming for all of us. Primarch Velionis raised one of his 4 hands, calling for silence. He looked down at the two humans with something that might have been pity. "You are young," he said. "Your species has seen so little of the universe. You find one strange thing at the edge of known space, and you believe the sky is falling. This is normal for young races. We have all been through this phase." "This is not a phase," Taesu said, his voice rising. "This is a threat to every living thing in this galaxy. We are asking for your help. We are asking you to listen." "And we have listened," Valionis replied. "We have given you more time and attention than your species deserves. Now, return to your small world and learn some humility before you speak to this council again." The other delegates murmured in agreement. The Deluni, aquatic beings who floated in tanks of water on their platform, turned away entirely. The Bakari dimmed their crystalline forms, a sign of dismissal. Even the smaller species, the ones who might have been allies, said nothing. Taesu looked at each of them in turn. He memorized their faces, their shapes, their expressions of contempt. He would remember this moment for the rest of his life. "Very well," he said. "We will go. But when the darkness comes for your worlds, remember that we tried to warn you. Remember that we asked for help, and you laughed at us." He turned and walked toward the exit. Yuna followed him, her head held high despite the shame burning in her chest. Behind them, the assembly had already moved on to other business. The human delegation was forgotten before they even left the room. On the transport ship back to Earth, Yuna finally allowed herself to cry. "They didn't believe us," she whispered. "They didn't even consider the possibility that we might be right." Taesu put a hand on her shoulder. His face was hard, but his eyes were not angry. They were determined. "I knew they wouldn't believe us," he said. "I came here because we had to try. We had to give them the chance to stand with us. Now that they have refused, we are free to do what must be done." Yuna wiped her eyes. "Project Nightfall?" Taesu nodded. "It's been running in secret for 8 months. 47 ships are already under construction. By the time the darkness reaches Council space, we will be ready. Ready to fight something that eats stars?" The Admiral looked out the window at the passing starlight. Somewhere out there, in the cold dark between galaxies, something terrible was coming. And humanity would face it alone. "We don't have a choice," he said. "If we don't stop it, no one will." Yuna nodded slowly. She understood. Humanity had always been alone. They had clawed their way up from nothing, survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed them. They had looked up at the stars and refused to accept that they were small. Now they would do it again. And this time, the whole galaxy would learn what that meant. The Bakari homeworld of Keth Prime had 2 suns. They hung in the sky like twin jewels, one golden and one pale blue. For 10,000 years, they had given light and warmth to a civilization of crystalline beings who believed they would live forever. On the day the suns died, a young Bakari named Telos was watching them from his family's observation tower. He had always loved the way the twin lights mixed together, creating colors that had no name in any language. He did not know that he was about to witness the end of his world. The golden sun flickered first. Telos thought it was a cloud passing in front of it, but there were no clouds on Keth Prime. The sky was always clear. Then the flickering happened again, longer this time. The golden sun dimmed like a fire running out of fuel. Telos called for his family. They came running and stood beside him, watching in confusion as the impossible happened. The golden sun went dark. Not slowly, not gradually. One moment it was there. The next moment it was gone, replaced by a circle of absolute blackness that seemed to swallow the light around it. Before anyone could speak, the blue sun began to flicker too, across the planet. 4 billion Bakari looked up at their sky and screamed. The screams were sounds of breaking glass, millions of crystalline voices crying out in terror. They had never known darkness. Their world had always been bathed in light. Now shadows were spreading across the land for the first time in recorded history. The blue sun died 3 minutes after the golden one. Keth Prime was plunged into complete darkness. The temperature began to drop immediately. The Bakari were creatures of light and warmth. Without their suns, they would freeze and shatter within hours. High Speaker Orm was in his palace when the darkness came. He watched his staff run in panic, their crystalline bodies already growing dim as the cold set in. He thought about the human admiral who had stood before the council 14 months ago. He thought about the warning that had been ignored. "We were wrong," he whispered to himself. "We were so wrong." He managed to send one message before his world died. It was a distress call, broadcast on all frequencies, begging anyone who could hear to send help. But no help could come fast enough. By the time the nearest council ships arrived, Keth Prime was a frozen tomb. 4 billion Bakari had died in the dark, their crystalline bodies shattered by the cold, scattered across a world that would never know warmth again. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The council convened an emergency session. Gone was the arrogance and the contempt. The delegates gathered in the assembly hall with fear in their eyes and panic in their voices. How is this possible? The Marathi delegate demanded. 2 stars do not simply die in minutes. The human warning, someone said. They told us something was coming. Primok Valionis stood in silence. His gray face was even paler than usual. He had laughed at the humans. He had called them children. Now one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy was gone, and he had done nothing to prevent it. Reports came in from the galaxy's edge. More stars were vanishing. Entire systems were going dark. Survivors from outlying colonies told stories of a wave of absolute blackness that swept through space, consuming everything it touched. Some called it the void. Others called it the hunger. But most simply called it the hollow, because that was what it left behind. Hollow space where stars used to shine. "We must contact the humans," High Speaker Oren said. He had survived because he was on a diplomatic mission when his homeworld died. Now he was the leader of a people with no home. They knew about this. Perhaps they have found a way to fight it. Valionis nodded slowly. Open a channel to Earth. The connection was established within minutes. The council expected to find humanity in chaos. They expected to see a primitive species cowering in fear, preparing to die like the rest of the galaxy. Instead, they found General Yunhana. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes like steel. Behind her, holographic displays showed ship movements across 12 star systems. Human vessels were gathering from every colony, forming into fleets, taking up positions that suggested careful planning and long preparation. "You have finally decided to call," Hana said. Her voice was ice cold. "I wondered how many worlds would have to die before you picked up the communicator." Valionis flinched. "General, we must apologize for—" "I don't want your apology," Hana interrupted. "Apologies won't bring back the Bakari. Apologies won't stop the hollow. If you want to survive, you will listen to me very carefully." The council delegates looked at each other in shock. No one had ever spoken to them this way. They were the rulers of the galaxy, the oldest and most powerful civilizations in existence. And now a human was giving them orders. But what choice did they have? "We are listening," High Speaker Oren said quietly. Hana nodded. 14 months ago, my people came to you with a warning. You ignored us. You called us children. You sent us away. So we prepared on our own." She changed the display behind her. Now the council could see detailed schematics of ships, unlike anything in their databases. The vessels were small compared to council warships, but they carried something strange at their cores. Something that glowed with the light of a star. Project Nightfall, Hana explained. 47 ships, each carrying an artificial stellar core. Miniature suns, created using technology we developed in secret while you were busy looking down on us. Artificial suns? The Marathi delegate repeated in disbelief. That technology is theoretical at best. Even our scientists have not achieved it. Your scientists never had to, Hana replied. You've been comfortable and safe for thousands of years. You never needed to push beyond what was easy. Humans are different. We have always survived by doing the impossible. Velionis leaned forward. What do you intend to do with these ships? The Hollow feeds on stellar energy, Hana said. Our analysis shows it is drawn to concentrated power sources. We're going to use our ships as bait. Draw it away from populated systems. Pull it apart. And destroy it. That sounds like a suicide mission, Oren said. Hana's expression did not change. It is. Silence fell over the assembly. The council delegates stared at the human general with a mixture of horror and something they had not felt in a very long time. Respect. You're asking your people to die. Velionis said slowly. I'm not asking anything, Hana replied. Every crew member volunteered. They know what they're walking into. They know most of them won't come back. And they're doing it anyway. Not just for humanity. For all of you. For the Bakari who died in the dark. For every world the Hollow will consume if we don't stop it. She looked directly at Velionis and her eyes were like fire. You ignored our warning. You laughed at our fear. Now you will follow our lead, or you will die in the dark like the rest. The choice is yours. The Primarch of the Sarati, who had ruled his people for 3,000 years, who had never bowed to anyone, lowered his head. Tell us what you need, he said. Humanity had been dismissed as children. Now the children were leading the galaxy into war. The war room on Earth's moonbase was crowded with beings that had never stood in the same space before. Sarati military advisors towered over human officers. Marathi strategists clicked their mandibles nervously as they reviewed data. Daluni diplomats floated in portable water tanks, their tentacles pressing against the glass as they watched the holographic displays. Dr. Shin Mina stood at the center of it all. She was a thin woman with gray streaks in her hair and circles under her eyes that spoke of years without proper sleep. She had designed Project Nightfall. She had built the artificial suns that now sat in the cores of 47 human ships. And now she had to explain her plan to species that had been traveling between stars when humans still lived in caves. The Hollow is not truly alive, she began. At least, not in the way we understand life. Our analysis suggests it is a form of energy-based entity, something that exists between dimensions. It enters our reality to feed on stellar energy, then retreats back to wherever it came from. If it retreats, why has it become a threat now? A Sarati advisor asked. We don't know, Mina admitted. Perhaps it has grown hungry. Perhaps something in our galaxy attracted its attention. What matters is that it is here, and it is feeding, and every star it consumes makes it larger and faster. She changed the display to show a simulation of the Hollow's movement. The black stains spread across the map, swallowing star systems one by one. The pattern was clear. It was not moving randomly. It was following the highest concentrations of stellar energy, eating its way toward the galactic core where billions of stars clustered together. If it reaches the core, Mina said, it will be unstoppable. The amount of energy there would allow it to grow beyond anything we can imagine. It would consume the entire galaxy within decades. The room fell silent. Even the Marathi stopped clicking. The scale of the threat was almost too large to understand. Show them the plan. General Yunhana said from her position near the dot. Mina nodded and brought up new images. These showed the 47 Prometheus-class ships, each one carrying an artificial stellar core that burned with the light of a small sun. The hollow is drawn to stellar energy, Mina explained. Our artificial cores produce a concentrated signature that is even more attractive than natural stars. We've tested this with remote probes. The hollow will change course to pursue our ships. So you intend to lead it away from populated space, the Serati advisor said. A delaying action. No, Maya replied. We intend to kill it. She brought up the next phase of the plan. The display showed the Prometheus ships scattering in different directions, each one pulling a fragment of the hollow after it. The entity would have to split itself to chase all the targets, stretching thin across light years of space. Once the hollow is dispersed, each ship will detonate its core in a specific way, Mina continued. The artificial suns will collapse into controlled singularities. Black holes, but small ones, carefully designed to exist for only a few seconds. In that time, they will create gravity wells so powerful that even the hollow cannot escape. You want to trap pieces of it inside black holes, a Deluni diplomat said, his voice bubbling through the water. Is that even possible? According to our math, yes. The hollow exists partially in another dimension, but its physical presence in our reality is still bound by our laws of physics. It cannot outrun a singularity. Nothing can. The Serati advisor made a sound of disbelief. This plan requires your ships to fly directly into the hollow. The crews would have to trigger the singularities manually. There would be no time to escape. Correct, Mina said simply. You are describing suicide, the advisor said. Mass suicide. 47 ships, hundreds of crew members, all choosing to die. 1,216 people, General Hana said. She stepped forward, her boots clicking on the metal floor. That is the exact number. And yes, they all know what they're signing up for. They volunteered anyway. The alien representatives looked at each other in confusion. The Serati lived for thousands of years. They had strict rules about risk and self-preservation. The Moradi were hive-minded. No individual would sacrifice itself unless the entire hive was threatened. The Deluni believed that every life was sacred and should be protected at all costs. None of them could understand what the humans were proposing. Why? Primarch Velionis asked. He had been silent until now, watching from the back of the room. Why would anyone choose to die for strangers? The Bakari laughed at you. My people dismissed you as primitives. Why would you sacrifice yourselves for us? General Hannah looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to the door and called out a name. Sora, come in. A young woman entered the war room. She was small, with a round face and bright eyes. She wore the uniform of a Prometheus ship crew member. Her name tag read LT Beak Sora. This is Lieutenant Beak, Hana said. She is assigned to Prometheus 7. She is 26 years old. She has never seen Earth's oceans or climbed its mountains. In 3 days, she will fly into the hollow and she will not come back. Sora stood straight and met the eyes of the alien delegates without fear. Tell them why, Hana said. Sora was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. I have a younger brother back on Earth, she said. He's 15. He wants to be a musician. He's terrible at it, but he practices every day because he loves it. When I think about the hollow reaching our solar system, I think about him. I think about how scared he would be in the dark. I think about all the songs he would never get to play. She paused, then continued. I'm not brave. I'm scared all the time. But someone has to go first. Someone has to be willing to walk into the dark, so others don't have to. If it's not me, then who? If it's not now, then when? The war room was completely silent. The Serati advisor, who had lived for 2,000 years and seen countless battles, felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was shame. Humans are strange creatures, Valeona said softly. You live such short lives. You should hold on to every moment. Instead, you throw yourselves into danger for people you have never met. That's what makes us human, Sora replied. We're not strong like the Serati. We're not ancient like the Bakari were. We're small and fragile, and our lives are over in the blink of an eye. But that's exactly why we fight so hard. Every moment matters. Every person matters. And if my death means my brother gets to see another sunrise, then it's worth it. General Hannah stepped forward again. This is the human doctrine. We do not ask others to die for us. We go first. We face the darkness while others find shelter. We have always been this way from the very beginning of our history. It is not something we can explain. It is simply who we are. Captain Lee Jun entered the room next. He was an older man, steady and solid, with gray at his temples. He commanded Prometheus I, the lead ship in the assault. He would be the first to fly into the hollow. I have 3 children, he said. They asked me not to go. They begged me to stay. But I told them what my father told me when I was young. The measure of a person is not how long they live, but what they are willing to die for. The Deluni diplomat pressed his tentacles against his tank, his huge eyes filled with water that might have been tears. We have existed for 8,000 years, he said. We have never produced a single person willing to do what you are doing. Then perhaps it is time you learned, Hannah said. Not from your books or your history. From us. From the species you called children. The meeting ended an hour later. The council representatives returned to their ships with new orders. They would provide support, intelligence, and escape routes for survivors. But the real work, the impossible work, would be done by humans. That night, Lieutenant Beak Sora recorded a message for her family. She sat in her small cabin, looking at the camera with that same calm expression she had shown in the war room. Someone has to go first, she said. Might as well be us. She sent the message and closed her eyes. In 3 days, she would fly into the end of all things. She was not afraid anymore. The Marathi expanse was supposed to be beautiful. Ancient texts described it as a river of stars, a band of light so bright that it could be seen from 1,000 light years away. Now it was a graveyard. Half the stars had already been consumed. The other half flickered weakly, their light fading as the hollow grew closer. Admiral Kang Tae-Soo stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the darkness approach. From this distance, the hollow looked almost peaceful. It was simply an absence, a place where the universe stopped existing. There were no flames, no explosions, no dramatic end. Stars just faded and disappeared, swallowed by something that should not exist. All ships report ready, his communications officer said. Prometheus' fleet is in position. Tae-Soo nodded slowly. 47 ships. 1,216 souls. They floated in formation ahead of the main fleet, their artificial cores burning bright against the endless dark. Each one was a beacon, a lure, a sacrifice. Open a channel to all Prometheus vessels, Tae-Soo ordered. The channel clicked open. He could see the faces of the crew members on his display. Captain Lee Jun on Prometheus I, his expression calm and focused. Lieutenant Beak Sora on Prometheus VII, her hands steady on her console. Hundreds of others, young and old, men and women, all of them looking at him and waiting for the order that would send them to their deaths. You know what we are facing, Tae-Soo said. You know what is being asked of you. I will not give you speeches about glory or honor. I will not tell you that your deaths will be quick or painless. I do not know if they will be. He paused, searching for the right words. What I do know is this. Every person in this galaxy, from the proudest Serati to the smallest child on Earth, will owe their lives to you. They may never know your names. They may never understand what you did. but they will live because you chose to die. On the Prometheus 7, Lieutenant Beak Sora wiped a tear from her eye. She was not crying for herself. She was crying because she could see her crewmates doing the same, and she loved them for it. It has been my honor to serve with you, Taisu continued. All of you. You are the best humanity has ever produced. Now go, do what only humans can do. Light the way for those who come after. The channel closed. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, one by one, the Prometheus ships began to accelerate toward the hollow. Prometheus 1 led the way. Captain Lee Jun sat in his command chair, watching the darkness grow larger in his view screen. His artificial core blazed at full power, sending out a signal that the hollow could not ignore. He could feel the entity turning toward him, attracted by the light like a moth to a flame. It's working, his navigator said. The hollow is changing course. It's coming for us. Good, Lee Jun said. That's exactly what we want. Behind him, the other Prometheus ships spread out in a wide arc. They were creating a net, a trap made of light and sacrifice. The hollow would have to split itself to chase all of them, and that was when the real plan would begin. The first ship to fall was Prometheus 12. The hollow reached it before the crew could activate their singularity. One moment the ship was there, burning bright. The next moment it was gone, swallowed by the darkness without a sound. 23 lives ended in an instant. Taisu watched from the Defiance, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. He wanted to look away, but he forced himself to watch. These people were dying for him. The least he could do was bear witness. Prometheus 12 is gone, his officer reported. Prometheus 4 and 9 are being overtaken. Tell them to hold their positions as long as possible, Taisu ordered. We need to stretch the hollow thin. More ships fell. Prometheus 4, Prometheus 9, Prometheus 22. Each one vanished into the darkness, their crews dying without even a chance to trigger their weapons. The hollow was faster than anyone had predicted. It was adapting, learning, hunting with terrible efficiency. But the human ships did not run. They held their positions, burning their cores at maximum power, giving the hollow too many targets to focus on. The entity began to split, stretching itself across light years of space as it tried to consume every source of light. Now, Taisu whispered, "Do it now." On Prometheus 31, a young engineer named Kim Dae-ho pressed the button that would end his life. The artificial core at the heart of his ship collapsed in on itself, creating a point of infinite gravity that existed for exactly 2.3 seconds. In that time, it pulled in everything around it, including the piece of the hollow that had been reaching for the ship. The darkness screamed "Dot." It was the first sound the hollow had ever made. It echoed across space, picked up by every sensor in the fleet. A cry of pain from something that had never known pain before. Something that had consumed 100 stars without feeling anything. Now it was feeling something. Across the battlefield, more singularities bloomed. Prometheus 15, Prometheus 28, Prometheus 33. Each one tore a piece out of the hollow, trapping it in a gravity well from which nothing could escape. The entity thrashed and writhed, trying to pull itself back together, but it was too spread out. Too thin, too weak. Lieutenant Beak Sora watched her screens with fierce concentration. Her ship, Prometheus 7, was deep inside the hollow now. The darkness pressed against the hull, trying to find a way in. The temperature inside the ship was dropping. The lights were flickering. They were running out of time. "Core is ready," her engineer reported. "We can trigger whenever you give the order." Sora looked around at her crew. 12 people, all of them looking at her with complete trust. They had followed her into the end of the world, and they were not afraid. "It's been an honor," she said. They nodded. No one needed to say more. SOR pressed the button. The singularity that bloomed from Prometheus 7 was one of the largest. It caught a massive piece of the hollow, a fragment that had consumed 3 stars on its own. The darkness fought against the gravity, struggled to escape, but it was hopeless. Nothing escaped a black hole. Not even the thing that had eaten suns. On the Defiance, Admiral Taisu counted the explosions. 23 ships had been consumed before they could trigger their weapons. But 24 had succeeded. 24 singularities now held pieces of the hollow prisoner, tearing them apart on a level that matter itself could not survive. "It's not enough," his science officer said. "The hollow is wounded, but it's still functional. It's trying to reform." Taisu looked at the remaining Prometheus ships. There were only a handful left, and they were scattered across the battlefield. But one of them was still at the very center of the hollow, fighting to stay alive. It was Prometheus 1. Captain Li Jun was still alive. "Li," Taisu said, opening a private channel. "Can you hear me?" Static filled the line. Then a voice, weak but steady. "I hear you, Admiral. The hollow is reforming. We need one more singularity at its core. One more push to trigger a cascade." There was a long pause. Taisu could hear alarms blaring in the background, could hear the groaning of a ship being torn apart by forces beyond imagination. "My core is damaged," Li Jun said. "If I trigger it, I can't guarantee it will collapse properly. It might just explode. And if you don't trigger it, the hollow survives." Another pause. Taisu could picture the captain sitting in his chair, making calculations in his head, weighing his life against the lives of everyone in the galaxy. "Tell my children I love them," Li Jun said finally. "Tell them their father did something that mattered." "I will," Taisu promised. "I swear it." The line went dead. On the screens, Prometheus 1 accelerated toward the heart of the hollow. The darkness reached for it, trying to consume it before it could strike. But Li Jun was a better pilot than anyone had given him credit for. He dodged and weaved, using every trick he had learned in 40 years of flying. And when he reached the center, when he was surrounded on all sides by absolute darkness, he triggered his core. The explosion that followed was not a singularity. It was something else, something new. The damaged core released its energy all at once, creating a cascade reaction that connected with the 24 existing singularities. For one brief moment, the battlefield was filled with light brighter than any star, and the hollow screamed again. This time, it did not stop. Lieutenant Commander Oh Yunji, watching from a monitoring station 3 systems away, recorded the moment the hollow collapsed in on itself. She watched as the darkness folded and twisted, pulled apart by forces it could not resist. She watched as the thing that had threatened to end all life in the galaxy died in a flash of human-made light. Then she put her head in her hands and wept. It was over. The galaxy was quiet in the days that followed the battle. No one knew how to process what had happened. An entity that had consumed 100 stars, killed billions of beings, and threatened to end all life had been destroyed. And it had been destroyed by the youngest, smallest, weakest species in known space. Admiral Kang Tae-soo did not feel like a hero when he returned to Earth. He felt like a man carrying the weight of 1,000 graves on his shoulders. Of the 47 ships that had flown into the hollow, only 3 returned. 1,216 people had volunteered for Project Nightfall. 1,139 of them died in the darkness. The survivors were scattered and broken. Some had watched their friends disappear into nothing. Others had triggered their singularities and somehow lived through the aftermath, pulled to safety by rescue ships that arrived seconds before their vessels fell apart. All of them carried scars that would never fully heal. Lieutenant Commander Oh Yoonji was one of the survivors. She had not been on a Prometheus ship. She had watched from a distance, recording everything, unable to do anything but bear witness. In the weeks after the battle, she found herself unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the darkness reaching for ships, saw the lights going out one by one. Dr. Park Yuna tried to return to her research, but the equations on her screen seemed meaningless now. She had spent years studying the hollow, trying to understand it. Now it was gone, and all she could think about was the price that had been paid. She had known Lieutenant Beak Sora. They had talked once briefly in the cafeteria of the moonbase. Sora had asked about Yuna's work, had seemed genuinely interested in the science behind the artificial cores. Now Sora was gone, and Yuna could not stop wondering if she could have found another way. Dr. Shin Mina, the architect of Project Nightfall, locked herself in her office and did not come out for 3 days. She had built the weapons that killed the Hollow. She had also built the coffins that carried over 1,000 humans to their deaths. Her calculations had been perfect. Her technology had worked exactly as designed. And somehow that made it worse. General Yoon Hana was the only one who seemed unchanged. She continued to work, continued to give orders, continued to plan for a future that others could barely imagine. But those who knew her well saw the truth. Her eyes were harder now. Her voice was colder. She had sent people she loved into the dark, and part of her had gone with them. The council convened 1 month after the battle. This time, when the human delegation arrived, there was no contempt. There was no laughter. The assembly hall was silent as General Hannah walked to the center platform, her boots echoing in the vast space. The Sarati Primarch Velionis rose first. He was ancient, proud, a leader who had ruled for 3,000 years. But when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I owe you an apology," he said. "My people owe you an apology. We dismissed your warning. We laughed at your fear. And when the darkness came, we hid while you fought. This shame will follow the Sarati for generations." Hannah looked at him without expression. She had imagined this moment many times in the weeks after the battle. She had imagined all the things she would say, all the anger she would finally release. But now that she was here, she found that the anger was gone. There was only exhaustion and grief. "We did not fight for your apology," she said. "We did not die for your respect. We did what humans have always done. We faced the darkness because someone had to." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a photograph, worn at the edges, showing a group of smiling faces in front of a ship. Captain Lee Jun stood in the center, his arm around Lieutenant Beak Sora. Around them, the rest of the Prometheus 7 crew grinned at the camera, their eyes full of life and hope. Hannah placed the photograph on the central podium. "Remember their faces," she said. "These are the people who saved your worlds. Lee Jun, who flew into the heart of the Hollow and lit the fire that killed it. Beak Sora, who was 26 years old and had never seen Earth's oceans. Kim Daeho, who triggered the first successful singularity. And hundreds of others, all of them young, all of them afraid, all of them willing to die for strangers who had treated them with contempt." She looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. "You called us primitive. You called us children. And maybe we are. But children are not afraid of the dark. We grew up in it. We learned to light our own way. And when your lights went out, we were the ones who brought them back." High Speaker Orn, the leader of the surviving Bakari, stepped forward. His crystalline form glowed dim with grief. His homeworld was gone. His people were scattered across the galaxy, refugees without a home. But he was still alive, and he knew exactly who to thank for that. "The Bakari owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid," he said. "My people would have died in the darkness if not for your sacrifice. We will never forget." Hannah nodded slowly. Then honor their memory by changing. All of you. The hollow is gone, but there will be other threats, other dangers, other warnings that you might be tempted to ignore. When that happens, remember what it costs to defeat this one. Remember that the universe does not care how old or powerful you think you are. She turned to leave, but Primarch Velionis called out to stop her. General Hannah, what do humans want from us now? What can we offer to repay what you have done? Hannah paused at the edge of the platform. She thought about all the things she could ask for: territory, technology, resources, power. Humanity could demand anything, and the council would have to give it. But that was not what the dead would have wanted. Reform the council, she said. Make new laws. From now on, every species must answer distress calls. Every species must share knowledge freely. Every species must stand together against any threat, no matter how small or how distant. Build something better than what existed before. That is how you honor the people who died for you. She walked out of the assembly hall without looking back. Behind her, the council began to argue, to debate, to plan. Change was coming. Slow and difficult, but real. In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Zarati Primarch resigned in disgrace, replaced by a younger leader who believed in cooperation instead of arrogance. New laws required all species to share scientific research and respond to emergencies together. A memorial was built at the site of the battle, a structure of light that could be seen from 100 systems away, bearing the names of every human who died in the hollow. Dr. Park Yuna was appointed the first human member of the Galactic Science Directorate. She spent the rest of her career making sure that no threat would ever be ignored again, building an early warning network that spanned the entire galaxy. Admiral Kang Tae-soo retired and disappeared from public life. Some said he moved to a small colony on the edge of human space. Others said he simply wanted to be alone with his memories. Either way, his name was given to a new star, an artificial sun created using Dr. Shin Mina's technology, placed in orbit around the frozen remains of the Bakari homeworld to give the survivors a place to mourn. On Earth, in a quiet memorial garden built on the shores of the Pacific Ocean, Lieutenant Beak Sora's final message played on loop for anyone who wished to hear it. Families came to sit and listen. Children who had never met her learned her face and her voice. Scholars studied her words, trying to understand the spirit that had driven her and so many others to sacrifice everything. Someone has to go first, her voice said, echoing across the water. Might as well be us. Her younger brother, now a successful musician, visited the garden every year on the anniversary of the battle. He would sit on a bench overlooking the ocean and play his guitar, filling the air with melodies that Sora had never heard. He had written a song for her, a simple piece about light in the darkness. It had become popular across human space, played at memorials and ceremonies whenever people gathered to remember the dead. The galaxy had changed forever. The old order was gone, replaced by something new and uncertain but filled with possibility. Species that had ignored each other for millennia now worked together. Knowledge flowed freely where it had once been hoarded. And everywhere, in every corner of known space, the story was told of the humans who had walked into the dark so that others might see the dawn. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the oldest or the wisest. Their lives were short, their technology was crude, and their history was full of violence and mistakes. But when the stars went out, humanity chose to burn, and the galaxy would never forget.